So, good morning, everyone. Today we have Mr. Pankaj Roy as a guest at Industry Unplugged. Pankaj is currently handling the charge of strategy as Senior Vice President at Wells Fargo. He has over 26 years of experience over various domains, including financial capitals, Six Sigma leader, strategy, management consultancy. He was also the Director of Data Analytics, Business Planning Manager, Credit Underwriter, and Portfolio Manager. These are all as exciting as they sound, and we are really honored to have you with us, sir. Now, to begin with, we have our first segment as rapid fire round. So, sir, basically, we will be asking you a few questions and you have to answer them within 30 seconds. So, shall we begin, sir?
Will I get a hamper? Will I get a hamper from Coffee with Karan at the end?
Definitely, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go
So,
ahead.
sir, what's the first word that comes to your mind when I say strategy?
Thinking.
Okay. What core competencies will a research person have to adopt before being called as a research analyst?
Um, Empathy.
That's really nice. What is that one quality or skill you have not left during your entire professional journey?
Passion.
Passion, sir.
Compassion.
Compassion. Okay.
Passion तो बहुतों के पास है, compassion थोड़ा कम है.
So, sir, do you believe that data analytics can take over the human touch when it comes to finance related work or jobs?
No. I'm
Okay.
assuming you want one word answer. Because in each of these I can go on and on, but it's probably better for the rapid fire to limit it to one word. But if you want, I can always go more.
Definitely, sir.
Maybe in the next one.
Definitely,
Yeah.
sir. So, sir, in case of organizational transformation strategies, what is one thing apart from integrity every employee should possess?
Teamwork.
Okay. So, sir, they were quite interesting answers. I think everyone liked it. Now we have a next segment as the industry unplugged session. So, sir, we will be asking you a few questions, and you have to answer in detail, like whatever you have opinions of the same. May I begin, sir?
Sure.
So, sir, our first question would be: digital lending is an upcoming trend in the banking industry. Despite the credit risk increased by the same, it increases the customer base to a huge extent. How do you think if Will Fargo enters this segment, will transform the same into a safer segment, or like ensure the safety, like or reduce the credit risk?
uh, Digital of everything or anything is really just a new channel to do the same thing. By and large, if you look at digital, that is getting everywhere. So it's not as if the fundamental need of a customer has changed. The delivery channel, there's one more efficient or easy delivery channel, whether you are going to your ATM or your mobile app or whatever, right? So first of all, we have to remember that most of the time digital is not a new product, but just one more additional, nicer, simpler, cheaper delivery channel, right? Now, the good thing about this channel is that it allows you a lot more data points. So in the offline world, when you enter the, let's say, a bank, store, or whatever, you would walk around the branch, but no one knows who's doing what. But when you walk around the website, everyone knows everything. So therefore, the benefit of this channel is that everything is being tracked. And then, of course, there are norms on what all data you can utilize or not utilize. Some data you can use at a personal level. Some data you can use only at an aggregate level and not at a personal level. So there are lots of laws and regulations governing that, because you don't want yourself to be pried upon each and every move that you make and so on. So I guess this channel really allows you to do much better targeting and segmentation. Let's say you are someone who says, I don't mind you trying on me, but this is what I want in return. Tell me what I need, whatever. And a lot of us sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly do that. So I guess this channel is really allowing us to do a much more targeted segmentation and things of that nature. And therefore, it's a much better channel than the previous one, because it has far more data, richer data. It is also more efficient, more cheaper, and so on and so forth. Of course, every good thing also has a negative point, and we have to figure out how to reduce the risk associated with it, which is related to data privacy, using it for unscrupulous means and things of that nature. But to me, it's the same need delivered through a more nicer, efficient channel, which has a different set of risks which we were not used to, and we need to figure out how to mitigate those risks.
Yeah, that is the thing, because if in case of digital lending, there's a lack of verification of the documents by the because you will never know whether the documents have been forged because they have been submitted digitally, and you may not have even personally met the person who is taking the loan or whatever the services.
I think I lost you a bit, but but actually digital has to be digital native, as I call it, that you have to think about process from scratch and not, so for example, the an example that you took, that we were using physical document verification for your, let's say, credit card or any other loan application and all of those types of things. Now digital doesn't mean that use the same process, but automate it. That would be simple automation, which is not bad, and people do it. I think digital really allows you to rethink the entire process. So in this particular case, for example, if you are able, if the customer allow you to use their Aadhaar card straight away from the DigiLocker, then it's very hard to commit a fraud, because DigiLocker, which is the government website from where if you are taking the document, most likely there is less propensity of fraud. So there is an eKYC and some of those types of things that are launched. So I think digital requires a different mindset of reimagining the process from scratch and not automating an old physical process.
That's fine. That's nice, sir. So, sir, our next question will be like you have been part of financial services for so long. You have worked at G Capital as well. So, during your you have seen shifting from traditional banks to ATMs to internet banking, etc. And now the concept of fintech is on the move. How do you expect banking or financial services industry, like already existing, to compete with all the more convenient and comforting fintechs?
I think, and some of you can relate to that because you are more millennials or newcomers or whatever. So many segmentation that we made in the past, we had to create a taxonomy to understand anything. I mean, even whatever subject that you study, someone said that science has to be divided into physics, chemistry, and maths, and someone said that business has to be divided into accounting and economics or whatever, right? So we all divided a lot of things into its incumbent pieces to better understand that and appreciate that. But many a time, what happens is that those tend to become limiting also. So, I mean, if you are a physics student, you will try to solve every problem using physics knowledge, right? Similarly, if you are a banking industry professional or a finance professional, you will try to apply your finance knowledge only because that's what you know. But I think the world has become far more interconnected and more fluid, and the boundary lines of subjects or industries or any of those things which were there in the past, I don't think hold good anymore. And my favorite, example to everyone is that whenever you have a personal problem, you can consult the Gita, but if you have a business problem, you can consult Amazon, because Amazon has figured out most of the rules of the game that are required in any business. Right? Because they figured out, I mean, if you were to say which industry is Amazon in, at different points in time, the answer could be different. So the industry classification doesn't hold true anymore, because if you were in some industry and trying to look at your competition, and since Amazon is not in that, you would ignore it at your own peril, and many people have done that. So many such paradigms or mental models or classification that were created in the past are now irrelevant. I mean, I would argue that even our education system, whether it is in school or in college, has divided subjects basis, whatever people thought at point in time, and that hasn't changed in the last 50 years. But frankly, you would agree that if people like Amazon and others are defying every classification, then why should we limit ourselves to the industry classification or subject classification that we did and remain in our own silos? So I do think that we need to have a far more holistic understanding, appreciation, and not get bogged down by the classification. The classification is important. It's good to understand that part, but you can't remain in that silo. So that's where I think that financial industry or any other industry has to reimagine themselves into say, I'm not a financial industry. I'm meeting this customer need. And by the way, if that customer need is to, let's say, withdraw money from somewhere, that person can actually go to a retail store or some other place also and withdraw money. And therefore, who am I competing with and what am I trying to do? So I think people have to let go of the old mindset of the way they imagine their business and focus more and more on the customer need and the purpose for which they exist, and not get bogged down by all those classifications. So, and the financial industry you were saying is doing it because suddenly competition is coming from anywhere and everywhere, and therefore the financial industry, whoever thought of themselves as financial industry, can actually do many other things. And many financial industries are actually getting into retail or some of those types of things that they never did before. So I do think that everyone will start playing into what was considered someone else's turf, and that's fine, because those turfs were based on old definition, and today the customer doesn't care. You know, Jeff Bezos want you to go to the Amazon website and get everything done. It's the everything store. So then they are competing with everyone. So everyone can rethink their model and figure out what they want to be.
That's really interesting, sir. So our last question for this segment will be the first and foremost thing a PGDM or rather an MBA should have is adaptability and acceptance of change. Moreover, being a person of finance creates more challenges when it comes to working in a fintech. Due to technical or the computer skills required in the same, like Python, R, what is the one quality you generally see during the hiring process which ensures that even if any huge transformation comes into the industry, this candidate will work it through?
So I think you mentioned that adaptability and dealing with change. I would think that that adaptability and dealing with change sort of signifies someone who's reacting to an environment, right? Because something changed, so you adapted. Something else moved, so you changed also, and things like that. I do think that while that's important, I think the more important thing is, are you leading change? Are you making change happen yourself? Because that's when you are more in control, and that's when you are bringing some value to the market. Because if everything is, you are reacting to everything, then you can't really be, making a significant difference. So I think the attitude or the mindset that people need to possess is that, yeah, if there is something uncertain happens, I will be adaptable, but by and large I will be sort of leading that change and making things happen on my own, so that I'm more in control, versus reacting to someone else inducting inducing change into the system. So that's one thing I want to clarify, because many a time people talk about adaptability, and I sometimes think that that's more of a reactive mindset versus a proactive one, saying, okay, where should this go, and I will make it go there. And that's what many entrepreneurs do, because they are imagining a totally different world and they are creating newness. So I would say that that whole entrepreneurial mindset of leading change and creating a new this thing, whether inside your big company also, you can do that. It's not as if you have to go out of a company and do that. So I think that is a mindset that will be more important, because things are so fluid that no one knows anything, and then you are as good or as bad as anyone else. So just make that confident this thing and start moving on. And people have spoken about the agile construct, and agile really is all about continually evolving and pivoting if required and things of that nature. So I think that's the mindset that is first and foremost. The second point that you made was about the technical aspect of education, that it seems to appear to everyone that if I was a arts or a literature student, then I have no place in this world, because it looks like the coders are running this world. That seems to be the mindset that has been created over a period of time. But we all know that this too shall pass, as everything else has passed. So already people are talking about no code, low code, and I don't know whether you guys hear these trends or not. But no code, low code basically means that frankly coding isn't required. Alexa will do the coding for you. You are someone who should be thinking about what should that code really do. So defining the problem, focusing on the purpose, those are becoming pieces for generating competitive advantage versus implementing things. So I think I'm not saying that you shouldn't do coding, or if you are a good coding person, you are bad or any such thing. I'm just saying that things keep evolving, and no skill set which is, or rather any skill set which can be defined, can therefore be automated. That's how AI and ML works. If you can define it, they will automate it for you. But there are still many things which are hard to define. What should someone do, or what should I do, or what should customers do, or what will happen? Many of those things are still in the realm of, what can I say, get gut feel. And that's where the advantage will be, because is your gut feel, or is your intuition, or is your thought process different or better than someone else? And that's where I think the people will have to differentiate themselves, because everything else, if you can imagine it in a process flow map, give it to someone, they'll automate it, and they won't need you. They'll say, yeah, this can be done. Now it won't happen everywhere immediately, but I'm saying that's the trend that is happening.
Yes.
So I these days people are already talking about skills related to empathy and EQ and those types of things, and behavioral science and things like that, which are all in the realm of undefined. They are not mathematical yet.
So, sir, these were really some great answers. I think everyone would have loved it. Now, entering into our next segment, that is the open house, where will the junior team will be asking the questions and discussing on the same with you. Yeah, you can raise your hands virtually, so physically. I can.
Karan
I'll
is
just.
raising hand. Tata
Yeah.
bye bye Karan. Bolo Karan.
Good afternoon, afternoon, sir, and thank you for giving us the insights. So my question is like considering the new developments, like RBI said that we'll be launching the official cryptocurrency now. Now, considering that they'll launch it by the end of this year, how evident do you think it would be in the next 5 years in the industry? And what will be the advantages and disadvantages apart from the security reasons?
Right, right, right. So this whole, first of all, blockchain as a technology that came about, it gave rise to this idea of currency also from a digital, and Bitcoin came along, and then all kinds of cryptocurrencies, and there are so many other exchanges, all that. So my personal view is that, what are the purposes that some of these things are serving and what they could serve potentially. So one purpose that money has always served is a storehouse of value. It means something. You invest some money and it's in a fund or whatever it is. So you would have seen people saying, "Oh, I invested in this Ethereum, Bitcoin, or whatever that currency was." So people have been trading and utilizing this asset class as a storehouse of value or an investment, as an alternate investment. So you invest in real estate, you invest in many other things, and all of that. So I think this asset class of storing value as a diversification measure has already been there. That is not new, and that I think will continue. The second one is that can it be used as a medium of exchange? So one is storage of value. Money also serves as a medium of exchange. So currency is where you want to exchange it for something, that you want to give that money to buy something or exchange it for something and all of that. Now in that area again, if you think about it, in my mind, it will remain like a Sodexo coupon. It'll have a group of people who will utilize it, but I don't know whether any of these things are likely to become national currency. So many central banks are experimenting with it and things of that nature, and they're trying to create digital currencies. So I think as long as it remains in the control of the government, then it will happen. Because if you think about any currency, you have heard about economics and money supply and all that. Governments would like to control the economy through some of these economic policies, where the printing of notes or the control over currency is a very important tool for the government. Now if you allow some Bitcoin type thing to take over, where it's all based on a group of people coming together and there's no centralized trust creation, then that won't work. So therefore no government will ever allow a currency which is not controlled by them, but as a alternate investment class, in a limited way, utilizing it for efficiency reasons. So in the banking world, for example, we have a Swift clearing system. Now someone can replace Swift with a much better, much faster, much simpler clearing system which is more efficient. So in my mind, those types of things can happen and should happen, because they bring productivity, efficiency, and all of those types of things. But allowing currency to be not controlled by government and owned by a set of individuals will never happen, because the government will never want to lose that power to control the economy utilizing that lever. So that's my personal view. I have to say these things evolve so fast that I have to tell you I am no expert, and I'm just sharing with you whatever I think I know at this point in time. Maybe some of you know more than me, because I'm not really researching this topic enough.
Yeah. So our next question will be asked by Saloni. Saloni, you may go ahead.
So my question is, given the conglomerate of companies that you've worked in and how diversified your profile is, what made you discover all of this? And but like now today, if we work in different profiles, we are considered somewhat volatile. But you've worked this as an advantage, and like this seems as a plus point. So, sir, we would like to know how you managed to do that.
Okay. Akshat, you drop me a WhatsApp message on the phone that you call me. I'll send you an article which you can circulate to everyone, which is on this topic of how should you think about your career, and how often should you change jobs, and what should you study and all of that. So this was
Definitely.
done 3-4 years ago when my older daughter was going to college, and then my wife said, "And Pragya ko kuch batao, career gyan and all that." So I did some gyan session, and then later on it got converted into an article which I wrote in some book, and then it got published. And then I said it's not
Great.
just for youngsters; it's for pretty much everyone. Whatever I wrote there. So then I've been sharing it with even older people, not just youngsters. So but let me answer the question that you asked. I think, and this is my like I said, all of these are on my own observation. So in the past, things moved very slowly, because we were not in a digital world which moves at rapid hyper speed. So if you joined Maruti Suzuki, it would take you 10 years to understand how the factory works. For you to become a factory manager or whatever, it will take 10, 15 years. There's no way you can shorten that path, because that's how these things are. But if you joined Flipkart or any other place, maybe in a year you created a huge impact, because you created this new cool website which just allowed hundreds of millions of visitors to come in and do a big billion sale or whatever it is, right? So the current world, we are consuming more and more of services, unlike material goods in the past. So earlier, I think we were dominated by factories, and those factories actually required much more time spent by individuals to become perfect and become, experts, and so on and so forth. In this current cognitive consumption oriented world, which is mostly driven by software and so on, you can achieve that perfection in a much shorter time frame. You can become an expert in something. Look at you guys learning 4 or 5 languages. We would learn like Fortran or Basic for a year. Today you can pick up a new language in a week, right? So many of those times have shortened for you to make an impact. So in the past, we would reward people based on tenure, because the tenure signified expertise, mastery, in some cases maybe loyalty or things like that. Today, if you spend 10 years in, maybe I shouldn't say Flipkart because it's a big company, but something like that, then people say that kuch gabadi hai. Isme 10 years in one company, maybe that company may not last 10 years. Forget, even if you wanted to stay there. So what I have argued in that article is that in future, 5-10 years from now, when people will look at profile, if they say someone has been there for 10 years, they will reject them. But if someone has been in one job every year and 10 jobs in 10 years, they will be in high demand. Now that's an extreme example, but this is really to prove a point that I'm trying to say, is that what everyone will care about is your ability to quickly make an impact. That's all we are trying to do. Are you someone who's smart enough who will quickly make an impact? What else anyone wants in any job? But in the past, that quickness came in years. Today, the quickness has come in months. And if you're taking years to make the same impact, why do I want you? So that's just a sort of a more of a notion that I'm sharing with you. But like I said, in my case, I actually spend years in many jobs, except a couple of years there was some issue, but mostly 4 or 5 years in my current job. I spent 5 years. Last job was 11 years in Dell. The other one, because I had gone to Singapore and I had to come back, that was a smaller stint. But before that, in GE and ICICI also, I spent 4.5 years. Only my first job I spent 2 years, because at that point in time I felt, yeah, consulting samajh nahi aa raha. So then I got opportunity to ICICI. So my job changes have actually just happened by chance, with no premonition of what will happen or what I want to be. So and frankly, I tell people that you should probably approach it in the way I approached it, not that I approached it in any specific reason. I didn't know any better. I said, ठीक है यार, ये दूसरी नौकरी ये बंदा बता रहा है मेरा दोस्त. Most of my jobs happened because some friend was there. He said, इधर आजा. And you'll also see the same. तो किसी ने कब बुला लिया, उसने 4 साल के बाद बुलाया तो मैं 4 साल में चले गया आऊँगा, 2 साल के बाद बुलाया होगा तो 2 साल में चले गया आऊँगा. Whatever. So I don't think I was planning my next job, but someone else said, yeah, wherever you are, this place is better. Look at it, talk to us. And I spoke and they hired me. So वैसे हुआ है. So I won't say you should read too much between the lines, because none of my job changes I had planned or this thing. It just happened at point in time. So therefore, I can't say that what I was thinking when I was doing it. Each of those decisions are very independent of each other.
So our next question will be asked by Swikriti.
Good evening, sir. Good afternoon, sir. So my question to you is that with the lending sector, which is already battling zooming NPAs and capital constraints to continue for some more time, what do you think that how justified is the government push for lending sector? And given the cautious approach of the bankers to lend to risky sectors, how do you think can be the credit growth?
In such times, what has always happened in the past, and I think this current budget is also alluding to that, which is the government spending has to go up. So the government, because the private sector is a bit, what should I say, scared. The banks are a bit worried about economic growth and all of that. So whenever such things happen, the government has to step in and demonstrate the path forward. So even this budget, there's a lot of, you would have seen focus on infrastructure development, creating a new development financial institution, creating a bad bank to remove some of the bad assets from existing banks so that they can become more confident and, go ahead and lend. But some of these things, there are no easy answers. I think the economic cycle is such that it will go through these cycles, and there'll be cycles where the private sector is booming and the government doesn't have to do pretty much anything. I think we are on the other side of the cycle, where I think the government has to push a lot of infrastructure investment, all that. In a country like ours, if you look at it, we are so starved of infrastructure and the type of investment that the government can only do, that no one can quarrel with that strategy either. I mean, we should have been doing it anyway, but we are so far behind on any part of infrastructure that you pick up, whether it is ports or roads or even cities. I mean, we have the same 5 or 6 cities that were there 30 years ago when I was graduating out of college. And we haven't added any one more city. And look at many other countries like China or US and all are anyway spread out. So how can you grow if you are just concentrated in 6 cities? So I do think that the government has to do a lot more, and I think they are understanding that and trying to create that. Private sector then will follow. When the government creates a, what should I say, a substrate or a field where there's confidence in people, then they will go ahead and do many things. So if they create good roads and all of those things, then people will go there and set up the investment and all of that. So the basic stuff has to be done by the government, which is what I think they're doing.
I hope the questions have been answered. The next question is by Sagar.
Right, thank you. So I'd like to start by thanking you, sir, for such a wonderful session. And my question is that in this very dynamic environment where we don't know what the next big thing could be, and especially in the world of fintech, so what are some of the key points that you have in mind while drafting your strategies?
Yeah. So I kind of alluded to that it's actually quite nice that no one knows what's going to happen. Then you can make that happen, which you believe in. How boring would life be when you can predict everything, right? So I would think that, I mean, as youngsters, you should look at it as a positive, that no one has a clue. Then your clue is as good as anyone else's clue. And therefore you can be that proactive person to say, I think I see this and I will make this happen. So I would look at for people to think about it that way, that given that there is so much of chaos and there are no experts, that's a great opportunity for anyone to come in and say that since there is no expert, I can also claim my space. Versus imagine the old world where it was assumed that certain people knew everything and therefore for the others, they had to be in queue. So I think the old world of linear growth has been replaced by leapfrogging exponential growth. And that's good for new people, no? Because new incumbents as companies like Amazon can leapfrog and go ahead. New individuals like yourself can again leapfrog and go ahead. New countries can leapfrog others and go ahead. So to me, I think this is an advantage for the proactive. It is actually very disadvantageous for the reactive because you don't know where to react and you may not be prepared to react also. But if you can become somehow proactive, then it's for yours to sort of lose, if you can say so.
Yeah, that was really nice. So, is Akshita here? Akshita, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, sir. As you know, the new normal due to the net connectivity, it's
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, it gets problems. So, can I ask my question now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, sir, you talked about the education system and you talked about that, we need to transform now. We need to, step up things in the education system as well. So what do you think can be done? So now recently there were some reforms in the education system wherein they included that, you can study any kind of, subjects. You can study physics along with geography. So what do you think can be done, to better that system?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the education system also can't exist in a vacuum, because end of the day, people who get educated have a desire to find a job and be employed and all of those types of things. So if the companies who are hiring people who are getting educated, at least let's say from colleges, you guys are in college, you are obviously thinking that once I get out of it, I can create value, and many people might become entrepreneurs, but several others would want to take up a job. So the college that you join, you would expect them to make you marketable, if I can say so, right? So first of all, we have to realize that the education system from bottom up can't be totally in vacuum. It has a market, it has a customer, and you have to immediately, you can't change the needs of that customer, right? So many times people say, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that. I say, yeah, but inko kharidega kaun? So I think what you have to therefore remember this is that it is all about going to be many experimentations. See, this new world is all about experimentation in everything. When we talk about startups, And by the way, in the education system, and some of you would know, lots of experimentation have been happening. People like Salman Khan for like decades have been trying to say, yeah, you can do a bunch of things online, and in the class you can come only for doubts. And in the US, many schools are doing that. They say, घर पे सलमान खान का सुन के आ जाओ और ऑफिस में स्कूल में आके टीचर से पूछ लेना जो डाउट है. And that's a great way. Yeah, why are you spending time telling someone कि बोर्ड पे लिख के लेक्चर दिया है ये whatever, right? So I think that kind of innovation had started. But I look around just in Bangalore, which is where I stay. There's so many different schools, and I know some friends who are more adventurous than some of us had been in our past, whose kids are going to such schools. There's one school which is called the Creative School. वहाँ ना कोई क्लास है ना कोई सब्जेक्ट है, मुझे तो अभी भी समझ नहीं आया कैसे होता है. But this friend of mine, and they tell parents that you can come and teach anything, and they actually encourage parents to come. So this friend of mine and his daughter, I think in 6th grade or something, he said, मैंने बोला किरण क्या पढ़ाने जा रहे हो? He said, I'm going to teach them product management. मैंने कहा product management तो हमें भी नहीं आता, बच्चों को 6th class में क्या पढ़ाओ? नहीं, उन्होंने बोला we can teach them anything. So imagine the kind of expanse that the school is allowing people to say. उस बच्ची को product management सुना रहा है, वो कुछ कर रहा है, some other parent can come and I don't know, teach something else. So they are basically saying that we want to make these kids as confident, questioning individuals, and through the parent network and the teachers that they have, we will give them enough life skills. तो अभी that I was asking him कि अच्छा उसके बाद क्या होगा, मान लो. So apparently in that school, if you don't want to take exams, you can skip. बोर्ड एग्जाम देने की जरूरत नहीं है. तो मैंने उसको बोला, what if your daughter doesn't take these board exam now, क्या करोगे? तो I didn't know that, which I now learned from him, that even in school US there is some category of kids who are homeschooled. So this school, you can claim that I was homeschooled, right? And then through that also you can apply to US colleges and get admission. So again, I'm also learning. So this is one extreme example that I shared with you. But there are many such examples and other types of methods that people are applying. I've heard of some European Austrian method and this, that, and the other. There's one method which I can't remember what it is called. But basically what they say is that kids learn either by listening or viewing or doing. And there is this school which makes people do things. If you have to learn physics, chemistry, maths, तुम चलो एक sculpture बनाओ. So when you are making a sculpture, then you have to think about physics, maybe chemistry. If you are making a human body, maybe biology, whatever. So they have a very different way of teaching the same thing. So I do think that many such experiments are right now happening on the fringes. But that's what startups are all about. That some of those experiments will catch on and will spread like wildfire and become mainstream. So to me, experimentation is the key in anything. And some of those experiments, or rather most of the experiments will probably fail and not scale. But that one which will scale is what we will all sort of then adapt. That's how I think about the education also. And that's much more difficult because it's not like a startup now. It's your, children's lives and all of that. And people are worried, yeah, बच्चे बिगड़ना जाए, ये ना हो जाए, नौकरी ना मिले, whatever. So those while the schools can experiment, the parents may be more worried. So it will take a much more longer time because the output of a school or a college is very hard to measure. And it takes a long time to measure that. So some of these changes will not happen at the speed at which the digital innovation in your apparel space or anything like that is happening.
But I think, sir, this is more of a Western thing, this school, what you have told us. Also, sir, the digital children are now more, advanced than we were at that time, digitally.
But दूसरा भी है ना, even if you look at that, हमारा भी ancient कुछ वो कहते हैं, वो गुरुकुल होते थे where kids will go and stay there and they will learn everything. Yes, there wasn't a physics teacher coming and teaching them anything. So to some extent, I look at this creative school and say they are doing probably the same thing in a different way in today's day and age. So I think people will do all those experiments and over time, people will see what works and what doesn't work. So that's how I think about
it. Akshita, you have another question?
Very, that was very insightful. So actually, yeah, I just have one more question. Sir, like the digital transformation that happened. So you at Wells Fargo, what did you feel? Like, were you inching towards that or were you just, plunged into that with the advent of Corona? So what happened?
It happened. So in June of last year, I was asked to look at how do we create digital product management capability in India. And the reason that happened was that because of Corona, we had out of 5,500 branches, I think 1,200 branches in the US were closed. So people are worried that people are not able to come to the branches. How do we, still service them? We should enhance our digital offering through mobile and desktop and all of those types of things. So we did have it, but we were not really prepared to take a huge volume. And then, of course, then you want to use this opportunity to add new features, attract new customers. And given that the future 2-3 years, revenue is likely to remain subdued, everywhere in the economy, including for banks, our revenues are not going to grow like crazy. Losses or potential losses can grow because the economy is bad. So if you look at the banks today, they're in a very bad situation. Revenue will not grow. Your losses can grow, and banks make money on the spread between interest rates, right? Interest rates are low. Low interest rates are bad for banks because the spread will also be low. Imagine if they were borrowing at 8% and lending at 10, you make a 2% spread. But if you borrow at 1% and lend at 2, you make a 1% spread. So your spread will also come down. So right now, everything for the bank is in the negative territory. Revenue, margin, losses, everything. So given that the cost is going to be a big challenge, they said that let's create that digital capability in India, because India will be at a cheaper cost compared to doing it in San Francisco, which is where head office is. So we have recently in the last 6 months hired a lot of people and set up big digital team over here in Bangalore. And I think this is only going to continue like crazy. So to your point, absolutely, the pandemic has pushed every industry to become more digital. And in our case, because it's a US bank, having a sort of an office over here, they're trying to do more capability building here because you can do it at a cheaper cost and do more with less.
That was very insightful, sir. Thank you for that.
So the next question will be asked by Saurabh. He is the senior member of SAG.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, it's an honor to have you here. Sir, I have one question regarding banks. Like we have seen that there is a rise of neo banking in globally, but in India they are still working with the traditional tier banks, but are not backed up by RBI. So, what do you think, sir? In next 5 to 10 years, that it can be developed, it can be an disruptive technology, or maybe it can, replace the traditional banks and all.
Two industries, banking and healthcare, are very dear to us ना. आपकी health और आपका पैसा आप जल्दी से उसको खराब नहीं होने देना चाहते हो. You are very worried about that, and therefore these two industries are also heavily regulated. कि कोई आपको चूना लगा जाए, आपको बीमार कर जाए, गलत दवाई देके या आपके पैसे ले जाए. And which is the reason both these industries have strong regulation. You will see the pharma industry, you want to make sure that the drug has gone through 3 phases of trial before it is launched. Similarly, for banking, RBI, SEBI, so many regulators are there to make sure that the common man or the investors don't lose money. And also at an economic level, if banks fail, that's a huge ripple of effect and all that. So therefore, these two industries remain very regulated. So while technology and new ideas and innovations are all experiments, and as we have said that many of these experiments can fail and may not work. So I think in banking and finance, regulators don't want people to experiment too much because some of these experiments can have a negative consequence also. So the appetite to innovate inside of the banking industry is difficult. Because if you are a large bank and you are responsible to RBI over here or a Federal Reserve over there, they are very conscious of what you're doing and how you're doing, and you have to kind of keep letting them know what you're doing, how you're doing, and therefore the opportunity to innovate is less. So I think all the innovation that is happening on the financial services is happening outside of the ambit of what is regulated. These other people are doing it. They are not under banking regulation right now. So to some extent, if you think about what is truly banking, and banking actually is all about lending. Everything else, the fee income and all of that is a piece of cherry over the cake and so on and so forth. The fundamental banking started is all about lending money, and then people created many other elements out of it. So, and that's where things can go wrong very quickly. We'll see that things can have gone wrong. NPAs get created, the economy gets harmed, the banks get harmed, investors can get harmed, and all of those types of things. So I think those regulations will also continue to evolve. So I think banking will get disrupted. Of course, payment is the easiest one. पैसे इधर से उधर जाने के लिए Google Pay, all these people, many other people have done that. They are now coming into many other areas. So many a time there'll be all kinds of methods. Some things will be done by independent players. Some others, they will work with banks to do it. Some things banks may do it themselves. They will also adopt the same thing. So I think all of them will happen. I don't think there is any one thing which will happen. As you would expect in any industry, the trend will be some collaborations, some acquisitions, some own capability building, and we are doing all the same. So as a large bank, we've also set up our own digital team. So we'll do a bunch of digital things. We are also having an accelerator program to work with startups. So some of those startups we will collaborate and work with. Some of the startups maybe we will acquire. There'll be some other company with whom we can have a tie-up that tum ye karo, hum ye kare, together we can do more and all of that. So I think the future will be more and more about collaboration and co-creation. So different industry players with different sort of strengths will come together and try to go to the customer together with a better value proposition that any of them individually could, which could be there, which has been there in the past also in other industries, that, you have two people come together and say, we'll together bring our forces, we'll do this, which individual. Those types of things will happen more and more.
Okay, so I think you have answered Saurav's question. So, sir, out of this answer, out of curiosity, like I wanted to know that, do you believe that RBI, is it fair that RBI puts so many regulations on the banks, or is it because it is very crucial for the industry, so it is also important at the same time, or we are overburdened with the regulations put by RBI, the banking industry?
Yeah, RBI is like your parent. हमें लगता है कि यार ये कुछ करने नहीं दे रहे, और जब गड़बड़ होती है तब याद आता है यार वो ठीक ही बोले थे पापा या मम्मी. So I think this industry does need supervision, and we have seen time and again over 50 years, 100 years, that left to themselves, the market is not efficient. It will bring the economy down. It will, take money away from the have-nots and give it to the haves. So if some people believe in the efficient market hypothesis, that doesn't exist. That's an enigma. I think लोगों को मौका मिलेगा तो सब लोग बेच खाएंगे. So that you should know, that's human nature. There's no doubt about it. I don't think human beings are naturally compassionate, thinking about other people. Human beings are naturally selfish because of the millions of years of evolution. अपनी जान बचानी है यार, नहीं तो मैं मर जाऊंगा. So that greed is good of Gordon Gekko is a fundamental fact. तो regulation तो चाहिए. So I don't think उसमें कुछ हुआ. Now you can debate whether it is too harsh or too less, and I think regulations also wax and wane. So the economy is doing well, and in US much more. So they will be very relaxed. And then crisis जाएगी, फिर वो एकदम पकड़ लेंगे, कुछ नहीं कर सकते तुम, and then धीरे बढ़ेगा. I think in general in the financial circles globally, RBI is seen to be a much more superior regulator than any other, including the American ones. Americans तो मतलब वैसे ही हैं यार, वो पैसे के भूखे हैं, वो कैपिटलिस्ट हैं, वो चलता है सब. वहाँ पे तो गोल्डमैन सैक्स का बंदा RBI गवर्नर बन जाएगा और RBI गवर्नर वहाँ का गोल्डमैन सैक्स में पहुँच जाएगा. तो when you have that level of mobility, conflict of interest is bound to arise. हमारे यहाँ अभी तक वैसा नहीं हो रहा.
Hopefully, sir. So our next question is with Saloni once again.
So, talking about the budget, the middle class was anticipating some cuts in the tax rates that would have led to more money in the economy or the economic revival, but nothing of the sort happened. So, what are your views on that?
We had too much money in the economy. Look at the stock market. 50,000 के ऊपर चला गया आज. So I don't think we need that type of money in the economy. I think we need some infrastructure building, some long-term, benefit that can come to the economy. Just money lying with the banks who are not lending does not help. Money lying with you and me also. हम खर्च कहाँ कर रहे हैं? मेरे को दे दो आप 100 रुपए, और अब मैं तो घर पे बैठा हूँ, कुछ नहीं करने वाला, पड़े रहेगा बैंक के अंदर, वेस्ट हो रहा है. So I think what you need is the money की velocity, movement. It should change hand and it should create some value. And वो मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है, my personal view, that all these infrastructure and other things, those are the true things. Generally saying तुम्हारा थोड़ा टैक्स कट गया, हमने वैसे ही नहीं खर्च कर रहे थे पिछले पूरे साल, क्रेडिट कार्ड के बिल कम आ गए, आपने मुझे थोड़े और दे दिए होते तो मैं कुछ नहीं खर्च करने वाला नहीं था. So giving money where it will not move, I think is not a good use of money when money is scarce. So I think we have to figure out how to continue to put money in places where it will continue to multiply and the velocity is high, and which is where I think the infrastructure type of investments are much better because they have a much bigger multiplication effect.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So our next question is
Which is the expert, take everything that I said with a pinch of salt. I'm just a journalist who has some limited shallow knowledge. So take it with someone who one
no,
point
sir,
of
your
view.
Answers seem quite realistic and practical, so we are really loving it. So, sir,
right, so they're very insightful.
We tend to be very, very, what should I say? ऐसा लगता है कि नहीं सब आता है, और सफेद बाल देख के ऐसा लगने भी लगता है कि शायद आता होगा. तो don't trust anything. You should always validate, verify, and there may be nuances that I have no idea about.
Definitely. So next question is by Sopan.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. So, sir, I would, as you talked about the financial institutions, and then we even talked about the equity market and the government policies and spending that they are doing in near future. So, sir, my question is that as we know, our economies are demand pull economy, and you just talked about that there is as such no demand created into by the citizens. So, sir, I just wanted to know, like our financial minister just rolled out some policies which were particularly just to boost our infrastructure, and thereafter we are expected that there might be a great demand in near future because that's the main key to generate a demand. So, sir, can you suggest some other policies or some other measures that might the government should take, or can you, sir, even talk about the 5 trillion mark that we are expecting? Like, it is by the economic critics, it is said that probably it is the decade for India that China witnessed in 1991 or Vietnam witnessed in 2000. So, sir, can you talk? Can you give some insights about that?
Yeah. I think all these goals of 5 trillion or 10 trillion are good one. In fact, even in companies or in your institution, you have goals. But sometimes, those goals have to be recalibrated. Clearly, some of these goals were created in the pre-pandemic era. And now, of course, I don't think you can have the same goal. I was talking to someone in Indigo Airlines, and they were saying that whatever our revenue and, the P&L looked like in 2019, pre-pandemic, it will come back to that in 2024, 5 years later. That was their assumption, and maybe they are right. I have no idea whether how the airline industry is doing. And similarly for hotel and hospitality, because they all sort of, so to some extent, a couple of industries have gone back by 5 years, right? Now, of course, there could be some who have also gone ahead because digitalization has happened and all of that. So I think goals are good directional numbers to have because you have an aspiration. But I think goals are what they are, and we should not try to sometimes meet those goals by cutting corners, which sometimes tends to happen when you take the goals too seriously. कि मेरे को 100 नंबर लाने तो मैं चीटिंग करके ले आऊंगा, तो that's not a good idea, right? So I think we have to always take some of these goals with a pinch of salt and revise it if it doesn't make sense, right? So, and because end of the day, the goal is a way for you to do the right thing. It should guide you to do the right thing, and if it is trying somehow making you do the wrong thing, then the goal is not worthwhile. So one, I just want to clarify my viewpoint on goals, because we all live in this thing by goals. New Year resolution कर लिया, फिर उसमें cheating कर ली, क्या फायदा यार? मतलब do the right thing, goal नहीं भी रखा कोई बात नहीं. So I think the main thing is to doing the right thing and let goals and some other things help you. If they don't help you, don't go by the goals. That's number one. Number two is what else and what other things can the government do? See, this economy is so massive, and where should the government prioritize? Some of us, and all of you and all of us, we have all probably had a very privileged life. Most of us have gotten to where we are and all of that, and we are probably in some 1% of the society or all that. I don't think most of us fully comprehend the complexity of India, whether it is just the economic, the bottom of the pyramid, people living on $2 a day, the complexity of our geography, the tribal areas, the Northeast, Kashmir, or even in big cities, Bihar will be very different from Karnataka. And so I think, how do you sort of keep in mind the diverse needs of our population and try to do more customized and focused targeting versus a one size fits all, is what I believe in. And that is where the devil is in the detail, because many a time the policies are marked and say sab jagah aisi hoga, which I think in a country like ours doesn't work. So you have to, I think, and do that. And again, I have very, I can't say whether the government is doing that or not, because I do see there are enough programs focused on specific population, जैसे कि गैस सिलेंडर देना इन लोगों को, or something on the northeast or something in Kashmir, whatever, and things like that. But that is an area which is always hard, because there'll be some population who will feel they are left out. अभी farmers को लग रहा है हमें नहीं मिलना, right? So there'll always be these prioritization that has to happen. So it's very difficult for me to say कि यार वो क्या गलती कर रहे हैं या क्या सही कर रहे हैं, because उस पे तो रोज टीवी में डिबेट होता है, देख लो. Everyone has a point of view on that. So I don't think I have a silver bullet to advise the government or anyone else to say what should they do or not do. But I do think that the principle is that, and that principle will be applied or seen differently by different people. You will also apply it differently. कि आप कैसे उसको allocate करो. You might have a different viewpoint on how you do it. So I can't say what else they should do, but they should just hopefully try to win trust, because कई बार क्या हो रहा है, many things are not happening because the trust is not there. So पहले उन्होंने नारा लगाया था सबका साथ सबका विश्वास, फिर बाद में उसमें एक तीसरा ऐड हो गया सबका विश्वास. बट वो नारे में तो ऐड हुआ है, बट मुझे लग नहीं रहा, और मुझे लगता भी नहीं है कि आप सबका विश्वास ला सकते हो. एंड ऑफ द डे देयर विल बी एनफ पीपल हु विल से आप तो गलती कर रहे होगे. So I have no policy prescription, unfortunately. So कुछ भी बोलूंगा कोई कहेगा कि मेरे को इसमें नहीं मिल रहा कुछ.
So I think Sopan's question has been answered. The next question is by Achal, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. So, sir, my question is like we talked about the stock market earlier in the discussion. From what we have understood from right now is that we have seen that stock market has been overly inflated because of the large amount of fiscal stimulus that has been injected in the economy just to keep us floating through that level. So do you think that if we are talking about how the economy is structuring, thinking about how the stock market is flaring is the right way to look at it?
First of all, whatever is happening. So we can't say whether it is right or wrong. It is the reality. So we have to first accept the reality and to then understand, okay, why is that happening? And then see whether, what should the future lie. So I think the issue is right now, there's a lot of liquidity in the market and people are scared to put it in any other, long-term investment. So the markets, I think, are sucking up some of those things. And that is just the way it is. So I do think that that's where I think what I spoke about, that longer term, you have to create many more other longer term avenues for investments and spending, which today do not exist, and therefore they are all crowding into one place. So clearly it is not a good thing, because if you create a big bubble, then when the bubble bursts, it hurts many people, and usually it hurts people who should not be hurt. So that is the problem with these bubbles. I don't think bubbles in itself is the problem. The bursting of the bubble hurting usually the retail investor is the problem. And therefore the government will try and see how to contain some of those things by taking various measures. So I don't think I'm telling you anything that you already don't know. Everyone is already saying globally, the whole world is flush with liquidity and these markets are no, relation to the reality. A lot of it is also driven by the pandemic, in which a lot of notes were printed by everyone because that was the only way they thought they could deal with it. And unfortunately, you can't even quarrel with that, because at that point in time, that was the only thing to do. So I think some of those things just are a reality. We have to see how to now contain it and navigate it to a more softer landing than a harsher crash.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, I do have one more question. Fintech, we know is the new tomorrow, and it is a very crucial part for taking the next step in the economy. So, how do you think we can take this to the lower rungs of the society, or to the lower portions of the society? How we can reach out to them and appeal to them so they can be a part of this too, and we can actually make this a reality and take it to the next level.
Yeah. I think the digital delivery, because it is so cheap, it's so much easier to reach out to many people, which is what every other industry has done. I think in the case of fintechs also, I think as the mobile penetration, the broadband penetration, all of these things, and people like Jio and others are just making it so cheap for some of these things. So first thing that you need is the digital infrastructure on top of which this can ride. So I think that is anyway happening and will continue to happen. On top of that, I think you need to have some data. Because some of these people, unless they use something and they produce some data based on which you can judge their creditworthiness and things of that nature, that also has to happen. So you have to get them to utilize those services on those platforms, so on and so forth, which is also happening. In fact, I know of some company, they have come with a very unique software. So you can buy a mobile phone from them and or something like that, yeah. And they can lock your phone if you don't pay the EMI or something like that. So it's a software lock or something like that. So I think some of these types of things are also interesting innovation, that, you didn't pay your EMI, now you can't use your phone. And these days your phone is like your life. You can let go of anything else. Petrol bhi nahi hai chalega, but ye phone chalte rehna chahiye. So I don't know. So I think people will continue to innovate in this area more and more. And finance and loans is an age-old industry. And we all know that a lot of people at the bottom of the pyramid actually pay the highest interest rates. We all know that. Folks like Grameen Bank and many others tried to fix that. So I do think that the digital can be a force of good, where you can engage some of these people and try and help them at more reasonable interest rates. The only thing sometimes what has happened is, if some of you have followed the history of these small banks and small loans, many a times, the government steps in and then they will give some loan waiver. All the farmer loans are waived. So फिर जो problem है, then you're not letting the market function, and then what will happen? So as long as the government doesn't interfere too much in some of those things and change the rules of the game in between, I think some of these things can over time be a force of good.
Definitely, sir. Thank you so much for the answer. It was very insightful.
Yes. So I think the next is Akshita.
So in the last answer, you mentioned the importance of data. I think even Amazon, in your talk, you also mentioned that Amazon, what it does is it collects insights from everywhere, and that is such an interesting model, because I think Amazon is the first company to implement that. So what do you think can go wrong in that? Like, can there be any limitations of such, you know, uh, data penetration, like such intricate data penetration that is happening? Like, if you're on a digital model, you are expressing everything about yourself. Even if you're in a bank, physically, people cannot observe a lot of things about you, but if you're on an online model, they can observe everything, all of your character attributes. So what do you think go wrong in that kind?
So the like I said, the pace of change has increased multifold these days. So the pace of wrongdoing has also increased. So anything that can go wrong at a massive scale very quickly. So that is something that we have to be conscious of. Ki, if everything is happening at such a fast speed, by the time you realize something has gone wrong, the damage it can do is far higher. So we have to be far more conscious and cautious of some of those things. It's almost like saying कि अब रोड पे आप 10 किलोमीटर की स्पीड पे चला रहे हो तो क्या एक्सीडेंट कर लोगे, और 100 पे चला रहे हो तो there can be a whole train wreck, hundreds of cars can get connected. That's the same thing which is in this AI ML world, where these algorithms happen at very rapid fast, and therefore they are very efficient. They can do hundreds of thousands of good things. At the same time, they can do hundreds of bad things if they go wrong. So we have to be very conscious of the bad things, and which is where you have to reduce that side of the equation, the error on that side of the equation. But I do think that people are realizing that. The other thing is, I mean, that's again said a lot about data privacy and how your data is used and things like that. So there are two issues over there. One is people are utilizing your data to make money without necessarily sharing the part of the value with you. That's one question. The other is some cases people say, I don't want to share my data with anyone and I don't want you to use it, and you are using it stealthily without people's knowledge. So all of those things are happening today, right? And people are raising that question. So I'm sure because those questions are being raised, a lot of scrutiny is happening. And Europe had come up with the GDPR law. The California state also implemented the same law. India's IDPR is also a similar type of a law that we're saying this data belongs to you. It's your asset. So data was never considered to be an asset in the past. Now it is being recognized that it is your asset, like your currency and like your anything else. And you choose to give it to someone for whatever rent that you want to charge. So that change, I think, philosophically has happened, but on the ground level, to make it happen is harder, because as you can imagine, it's so complex in the digital world that people don't even know where you have given your data and who's using it to make how much money. So it is a complex place, but I think it is the realization is coming and the laws are coming, and these things will, I think, hopefully lead to some better conclusion than we have had in the past.
Very true, sir. I think the legislation part is yet to catch up with the increasing digital transformation. Another question I have is that sometimes, I mean, through a lot of my friends also I've heard, they have this myth that in a finance related profile, there is no use, or there is very less use of personal branding or marketing yourself, marketing yourself as a brand. So how true is that?
So personal branding in terms of when you are marketing yourself to a recruiter, to a company or something, or where?
Making your own brand, essentially, like on LinkedIn, or even in the corporate world. In the finance role, if you're in a finance role, there is no role of personal branding as such. Your work speaks for itself, and you don't need to kind of the thing that marketing people do. You don't need to do that. So how true is that?
So first of all, I look at marketing as telling people that you are doing and not telling people that you are not doing. So I have this fundamental this thing that marketing is all about, even if you are a company or a person, the job of marketing is to take that message in the right way to the large number of people. That's what a branding person or a marketing person in a company do. I used to work in Dell. someone who's in marketing should say Dell makes these nice cool laptops with these features which are better than some other that you can guess, and not say something which is not true. Similarly, the branding that you are doing for yourself is all about saying, this is Akshita Dua, this is what I stand for, this is what I know, this is what I don't know, this is where I can add value. So to me, branding on marketing is really just letting more people know of the value you can create. So I don't see branding not being relevant to anyone, because everyone is living in a society which is interconnected, and forming some more larger connections can allow different people to collaborate and create more value than what you individually can. So to me, the all the value of networking or branding, because to me the branding should lead to expanding your network, and a larger, more diverse network of any individual should help you create more value together than you otherwise could. So I would say that to me, this networking and branding, Akshat, I'm going to send you a video on networking also, on what I think about that. मैं बहुत सारी चीजें मैंने इकट्ठे कर ली, मेरे पास सबका एक एक वीडियो है, मैं सब भेज दूंगा तुम्हें WhatsApp पे. So I think it's relevant for everyone.
That's great, sir. Thank you for dissolving that myth. It needed to be
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है.
heard.
Like I said, everything you have to verify it for yourself. Me or anyone else will share with you their perspective, their experience, and you should have as a sponge, take everything, but eventually you have to figure out what makes sense to you. So I always tell people that no one person, when people say who's your role model, I say no one, everyone is a role model. I can pick up something from everyone, and then from someone new, because if you go to one role model, then you are cast in stone in some old way and not evolving.
Very true, sir. That was very insightful. Thank you, sir.
So we have a next question from Bhavya.
So my question is, according to you, disinvestments by the government are helping the corporates or the public?
It is many a time, many of these debates and questions are posed in a binary, this or that, ye wo. My personal view is that the future belongs to and not or. सबका साथ सबका विकास, not एक का दूसरे का नहीं. So it has to eventually help both the people, right? So eventually, let's say Air India gets privatized and Tata's get that airline, right? So in the initial phase, it will appear that, oh, this Tata company has benefited from it because they have gotten hold of a nice airline, and Indigo has lost it, or maybe someone else, I don't know who has lost it, whatever. But over time, it should create a better market for the airline. It should eventually help the customer. Eventually, the government was spending so much money on subsidizing airlines. That money can be, allocated elsewhere, let's say water sanitation project or whatever. So I think all of these questions have multiple second, third, fourth order consequences. And one has to, when you have to evaluate anything, you have to look at all of those things. In fact, I read a book long ago, someone gave it to me. It was called Economics in One Lesson. And frankly, that lesson really was a life lesson, which basically said that any decision that you are taking, and you have to assess how good or bad that decision is. If you can do two things, hopefully you'll be better off than if you did not do those things. So the first thing is, think of the longer term consequences of the decision. आज तो कर लिया 5 साल बाद क्या होगा, 10 साल बाद क्या होगा. And the second is the consequence of that decision on population that you had not considered. तो आपने तो कर दिया कुछ भी अपने लाइफ में, बट पेरेंट्स के ऊपर क्या हुआ वो नहीं सोचा, या कुछ और दोस्तों पे. So if you can think of any decision long term and more broader set of people that can be impacted, which is what really is the second order, third order consequences, I think you'll be better off. So I think ये disbursement हो गया, टाटा को मिल गया, ठीक है, that's one first order consequence. What are all the consequences, and then can you evaluate it? And then the question is, what is the time period in which you want to evaluate it? And some of it could relate to some more strategic issues and all that. So that's how I look at it. So I think these are all divestments and all are good, because the government has been, not been able to run some of these companies very well. They are subsidizing it. They are not, and even through that subsidy, they have not been able to manage it well or improve the service. So why be in that business?
I think so. That was the last question from the save rate. It was really nice, sir. We really enjoyed this session, and it was really an honor to have you. You really give some good insights to everything we asked. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. I always enjoy these questions because they also help me frame my thoughts better. So I always enjoy all these questions, because then it allows me to also think a bit and not become rusted.